All right, welcome. Today we're diving into a topic that can send your mind into a total spiral: implantation bleeding. You know, that little bit of spotting that shows up and you're not sure, is this an early sign of pregnancy or is my period just showing up early to the party? Let's get some clear answers.
This is the big question, isn't it? You see that little bit of color, it's a few days before you expect your period, and your brain just goes into overdrive. It's this crazy mix of hope and total uncertainty. So in this explainer, we are going to cut right through all of that noise and just give you the straight up facts.
Okay, so to really understand what's going on, we have to start at the very beginning. What is this spotting? Like, where is it even coming from? Let's break down the biology behind it.
It all comes down to this one word: implantation. So after an egg gets fertilized, it makes a little journey down to the uterus. And implantation is that amazing moment when this little embryo snuggles up and attaches to the lining of the uterus. This is literally the very, very beginning of a pregnancy.
And you know, the reason for the bleeding is actually pretty straightforward. As that embryo attaches itself, it kind of has to, well, burrow into the uterine wall. Think of it like it's making a cozy little nest for itself. And that process can disrupt the tissue just a tiny bit, breaking a few super small blood vessels, and that's what causes the spotting. It's a totally normal part of the whole thing.
Now, to really wrap our heads around this, we have to talk about timing, because timing is absolutely everything here. Let's take a look at how this all fits into a typical monthly cycle. Understanding this journey is really the key to telling the difference.
Okay, so let's walk through this together. If we say day 1 is when your period starts, ovulation, when the egg is released, usually happens somewhere around day 14 to 18. If that egg gets fertilized, the new little embryo travels for a few days until it finally implants itself, and that typically happens about 10 to 12 days after ovulation.
And right here, this is exactly why it's so confusing. Because of this timing, the spotting shows up almost exactly when you might be starting to look for your period anyway. Usually just a few days to maybe a week before it's actually due. It's this overlap that makes it so darn tricky to figure out what's what.
So you're probably thinking, okay, if the timing is so similar, how in the world am I supposed to tell them apart? Well, it turns out there are some pretty distinct signs you can look for. Let's get into the nitty-gritty of what this spotting actually looks and feels like.
First thing to look at is the color. Unlike a period, which is usually bright or dark red, implantation bleeding is almost always a very light pink or even brown. If it's pink, that means the bleeding is fresh, it's happening right now. But if it's brown, that just means it's slightly older blood that took a little longer to make its way out.
The next huge clue is the amount. We're calling it bleeding, but honestly, it's not really. It is just spotting. We're not talking about a continuous flow here. You might see a couple of drops and then nothing for hours, and then maybe a little more. It's so light that you definitely wouldn't need a pad or anything.
And how long does it last? This is another key difference. Implantation spotting is super brief. It might only stick around for a few hours or maybe a day and a half. In some cases, it can go for up to 3 days, but that is the absolute maximum. It's much shorter than a typical period.
Okay, let's talk about cramping, because the physical feeling is also really different. I love this one description I found. It said it can feel like butterflies fluttering in your stomach. It's a much softer, gentler feeling than what you might be used to with your period.
Some other people describe it as more of a gentle pulling or even a light prickling feeling. But the most important thing to remember here is that these cramps are way milder than your typical period cramps. They just don't have that same intensity that really grabs your attention. So, we've gone through all the individual signs, right? The color, the amount, the duration, the cramps. Now, let's put it all together, side by side, for the ultimate comparison. This should make everything crystal clear. This chart really lays it all out, doesn't it? When you look at flow, implantation is just that very light on and off spotting. A period, on the other hand, usually starts light but then gets heavier and becomes a steady flow. For color, you've got pink or brown versus a bright to dark red. For duration, it's a few hours up to 3 days max, compared to a period which can be 3 to 7 days. And finally, the cramps, mild and fluttering versus way more intense and persistent. So look, if you take just one thing away from all of this, let it be this: implantation bleeding is light spotting. It happens before your period is due, and this is the most important part, it stays light. It never, ever turns into the heavy flow of a regular period.
So what if you've been listening to all of this and you're checking off the boxes, thinking this might be what's happening to you? What's the next step? Well, really, the only way to know for sure is to wait until the day your period was supposed to arrive, and then take a pregnancy test. That's what will give you the real answer that this very, very early sign might be pointing to.